Tesla investors, imagine this. Elon Musk isn't just building cars and rockets, he's on a mission to save America from economic collapse and pave the way to Mars, unlocking trillions in value for Tesla along the way. From dodging a fiscal doom loop with AI-powered growth to humanoid bots, supercharging GDP, and Tesla's dominance, this could be the ultimate catalyst for your portfolio exploding. Stick around as we break down the numbers, the risks, and why this political powerhouse move might make Tesla unstoppable. You won't want to miss how it all ties back to massive gains. Cern Basher is a chartered financial analyst who's currently running his own investment advisory firm called BrilliantAdvice, providing wealth management services. Welcome, Cern.
Hi, Herbert. Yeah, we've got a big topic to talk about today.
I like the extra effort you put in here, the charts, the research and the analysis. Right now, people are concerned about Elon creating a new political party. But what you wanted to do today is show all of his accomplishments and then kind of put in context of why he might want to do this political party beyond just the benefits to Earth, but also to Mars, how it all fits together. And then, of course, how could that actually benefit us Tesla investors? Love this first slide that you put together here. Tell us what we're looking at here.
Yeah, this was, I sort of added to the work of others on this, but this is a list of things that Elon Musk has essentially put into the world, whether he's unveiled, contributed, worked on. Of course, there's teams of people behind most of these things. But when you look at this list, it's a vast body of work. And right off the bat, 14 children. Right?
Sure.
Which, for anybody is a, pretty significant contribution, particularly in a world that has a shortage of, of births and so on. So he's contributing in that way. But then when you get into all the other things that he's done, a lot of people like to put Elon in a box and say, well, okay, he's a good engineer, he's a good, rocket scientist. But when you look at everything that he's been working on, it's pretty incredible. And so, the 4680 battery, the AI4 and AI5 chips, and all the previous hardware before that. And then now we're adding to it the American Party. And so for a lot of people, that's something that sticks out and says it's not consistent with Elon. Why is he getting into politics? Doesn't he know it's going to destroy him? And I think the reality is it's a much bigger, broader picture than that. To me, it actually can and does fit into the broader context of what Elon is trying to contribute to humanity. But then just go down the list. I mean, we've got Colossus and Cortex, the AI supercomputers that he's developed for XAI and Tesla. All the contributions through SpaceX, whether it's Crew Dragon, whether it's the Raptor engines, whether it's Mechazilla to catch the booster, just all those. And then, of course, with Tesla, the incredible things, the gigafactories, right? The factory is, really the most important, one of the most important pieces. Full self-driving software, which we all know how incredible it is, but the world doesn't know that yet. And the new things that really none of us have really seen yet, like the unbox process. How incredible is that going to be if you can produce a car every 5 or 6 seconds coming off the assembly line? So we can just go through this list one by one, and it's kind of incredible that one human being can be involved in so many different things.
Yeah, I love this list so much, and each one of them is so powerful. I do agree. It's like if you pause, and each one of them, it's such a huge contribution. Like, of course, Zip2 sounds like so old a long time ago, but actually, he created the software that created the way the Google Maps kind of laid things out. XAI and X, that's a lot to talk about here. XAI, of course, is currently today the leading in the world, the smartest AI in the world. This is going to lead us to AGI, which is just that alone is enough to contribute to the world. But energy that you talked about here. This is funny. You had a couple here, Tesla shorts. I thought that's a good Easter egg. Bring it right back to Tesla stock, not a flamethrower. I think what's interesting about a couple of these things, like not a flamethrower and Tesla Diner, they're kind of jokes, but they're also not. Like Tesla Diner and Drive-In, I think when people realize that here's Tesla creating a restaurant, but they're trying to show you a showcase what the future is, they could theoretically, if they wanted to, like do replace McDonald's. Just have these kind of robotic driven, right? And the reason McDonald's became so successful was they replicated a perfect same quality burger, but really low cost and replicated the process. Imagine if Tesla decides to do that. They could wipe everybody out.
Well, the idea of just making superchargers destinations, whether it's a restaurant or something else, is intriguing. And I think this is the first sign of that potentially. Yeah.
And of course, Starlink is communication, and people don't realize yet that they could replace broadband, Comcast. He keeps playing it off and saying, no, that's not what our goal is. But eventually it probably will be.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because there are some very consequential things on here. Then there's some other things, like you mentioned, that are just kind of fun. But this is a man with a sense of humor. You may not fully appreciate his sense of humor, or it may seem kind of childish at times. But you know what? At least he has a sense of humor. We don't often see that from CEOs. And so, he's made a lot of these things a lot of fun for people. But the things that really matter, I mean, building AI and intelligence, finding ways to drive down the cost of energy, right? All the things that Tony Seba talks about, Elon is squarely in the bullseye of many of those things, right? The cost of intelligence is going to trend towards zero over time. The cost of energy is going to trend towards zero over time. The cost of labor trending towards zero with Optimus. So while Optimus is just one word on this page, the implications of that project is humanity changing.
Yeah, the cost of communication, the cost of internet access, the cost of transportation. Yeah,
Neuralink as well. I mentioned Neuralink again. It's in development, but the implications of that for humanity could be profound. Not only helping people that don't have the mobility or can't see, give them those things back, but also just helping people eventually, potentially putting a computer in our own brains.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds crazy right now, but
you
in
can
the future,
download info. Yeah, downloading info is this weird part. It's like, okay, so so go ahead and lay groundwork here. What have we done?
So Elon recently gave a presentation, I think it was a few weeks ago now, on SpaceX's plans for going to Mars. And as I think about it, when you go to Mars, not only do you have to figure out how to get the materials there, and Elon's talking about sending thousands of starships, right? And that's a tremendous engineering challenge. But ultimately, if you're going to put people on Mars, you're going to need some form of government. You can't just send thousands of people to Mars and not have some way for people to govern themselves. And so for me, government and Elon's involvement in politics is kind of consistent with his mission. This is a mission-driven man. And so here he is on Earth right now, looking at an imperfect system. And as an engineer, he hates imperfect systems. So here's one of the brightest people on the planet putting his mind to it, and he sees a better way. Why would we not want him to get involved in politics from that perspective? If he thinks he has something to add, if he thinks he can find us a better way to govern ourselves, he's going to need to figure that out for Mars. Why not have him help us figure this out on Earth? Right? Now, here's a man who is already distracted. That previous list, he's been distracted 1,000 times over developing all those different things.
Yeah.
Is this really the distraction that destroys him? I don't think so. This is a man that's showing us he's perfectly capable of being distracted in so many ways, yet able to move forward in so many other ways simultaneously. He doesn't just go away and sit on a mountaintop and come back and say, "Oh, I figured out Raptor engine." No, he's doing that as he's acquiring, Twitter, or as he's doing something else all at the same time. And for most of us who can't operate that way, I'm barely good at doing one thing at one time. So therefore, we can't fathom a man who's capable of working on multiple different things at the same time. We just can't fathom it. And so the inclination is like Dan Ives has tried, has talked about, we want to clock Elon's time. We want to make sure he's spending enough time on Tesla. Those are the kinds of reactions I think that we get from people that are like us, where we can't fathom working on 10 or 15 things at the same time. So anyway, for Mars, again, I think this is consistent. This is an important endeavor. We need a form of governance on Mars. And I think Elon has probably thought a lot of this through. And so the question is now, can we create a better political system than the one we have here on Earth? And if he figures it out on Earth, then you just sort of copy paste that potentially to Mars. But why not at least try here first? Because why put a new political system on Mars if it hasn't been tested and tried? Perhaps you might want to do that here. So that was sort of the point of my post on this. The other risk that he runs is if he doesn't fix politics here on Earth, what happens if you're sending all these supply ships to Mars and they stop coming? It puts the whole Mars mission at risk too. Why would the supply ships stop coming to Mars? Well, it might be because something really bad's happened on Earth and we can no longer afford to send the ships. Or like we have today, the political winds change and whatever the previous administration agreed to, the next one comes in on the first day, cancels it. So I'm sure Elon sees that kind of behavior and says, I need to figure out a better way so that we can have some longer term thinking here.
Mm-hmm.
So those are my thoughts around that.
Good points.
There's this notion of the United States could be facing, what some would call a doom loop. And so let's just talk about that for a minute. And I put together a couple of charts on this. This is a way for me to try to relate this to something that regular people can understand. These are the numbers from the US government, but I divided all the numbers by 50 million to get down to a number that we can comprehend. The green line is government income. Call it 100,000. Think of it like a household, $100,000. The government has $100,000 to spend. But the red line is what the government's spending, currently 140. The green line is growing at 3%, and the red line is growing at 5%. And this just shows a 15-year time period, just to show this analysis over 15 years. So you look at this chart and say, okay, yeah, spending's higher than income, but it's growing. And you know what? This chart's kind of pretty. I don't see a problem with this. Okay, we're living beyond our means. So what? We'll just borrow the difference. So on the next page, if we map out the deficit, which is simply the difference between that green line and red line, that's on the bottom in the bars. The deficits look pretty small and growing over time. But we also have to remember that we're starting off with debt. We already have a pile of debt. And by the way, that debt works out to about $750,000 for this fictional household or a fictional government. Okay, that's in relation to the $100,000 a year income. It's debt of about $750,000. So you can see here then, with our growth of income at 3% and our growth of spending at 5%, and the deficit's growing, the debt also grows, right? And it's not a straight line; it starts to curve up. What the blue line is showing there, Herbert, is the debt to income ratio. So it starts off at about 7.2 and goes to 12. And you may say, okay, 7.2 to 12, no problem. What's the big deal? We can handle that, right? You're up to 1.8 million in debt in 15 years on a household that's earning, $100 and some $1,000. Okay, so what? All right, the next chart shows the problem.
Yep.
Interest cost. So the leftmost bar is for this fictional household, the current interest cost is like $20,000. So 1/5 of their income is going to paying interest. You may say, okay, well, that still leaves, 80% for other stuff. Not terrible. Well, the problem is that the current interest cost was set at a time when interest rates were lower. So we're facing actually a higher interest cost going forward. The next bar, it's going to go from 20 to about 30 at current interest rates, 30,000. Okay. And the interest cost as a percent of income goes from like 20% up to about 30%. Now we look at then over the full 15-year period, over this time, the interest cost grows to more than about 75,000. And the interest cost as a percent of income now is approaching 50%. So I don't know about you as a household, but if half of my income was going to pay for interest, that wouldn't leave much money for anything else. And my point
just
with
interest. That's the interest. That's just the interest. Paying down debt. That's not spending.
Right. And so this shows how unsustainable this is. At some point during this 15-year time period of this illustration, it's just an illustration. At some point during this 15-year time period, things would break. There would be something that would cause a crisis that would not allow this chart to continue in the beautiful way that it does. For a household, absolutely. It would happen earlier. For a country, maybe it happens a little bit later. Elon understands this. Elon understands that we're on an unsustainable track with respect to our spending. We have a spending problem. No one wants to tackle it because the government spending is someone's income. And we all think differently about what's important. Some want to spend more on defense. Some want to spend more on social programs. Some want to spend more on education, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there's not been a political will to deal with this. But Elon is saying we are on an unsustainable path. Something has to be done. And this is why he's had this strong reaction to the big, beautiful bill. He wants Congress to act. He thought Congress would act. He's very frustrated that Congress is not. And now he's saying, okay, you're not going to act. I'm going to force you to act. I'm going to start another party. We'll get some people in Congress who can be swing votes on certain things, and we're going to have some power to, affect some change. You don't have to become, elected as the president or the majority in Congress to have a lot of power. Right. I think Alexandra was saying on Cyber Bulls last night that some of the minority parties in Europe have a lot of power. There's some of the richest, most powerful parties because they're the swing votes. Everybody has to get them on their side in order to get anything done. So by injecting himself into politics, again, makes himself a very important player in this space. But this is why, in my opinion, this is why he's doing it. Okay. So let's look at a couple of scenarios. Well, yeah. So here's the breakdown, Herbert, for last year for the government spending. The biggest piece, Social Security, defense, transfers to states, right? And the interest on debt was the fourth. So imagine that fourth slice becoming half of the pie at some point. Yeah. It's going to crowd out everything else.
Yeah.
That's unsustainable. Right? Yeah. I don't want to cut Social Security for anybody, but if the interest on the debt becomes half of the pie, Social Security would have to be cut, right? There's just no way around it. It's not sustainable to continue to grow the interest on the debt as rapidly as it's growing. It's not going to work. I don't know where the crisis point is, but you know what? We don't really want to find out. Now, people have often said that, okay, when we approach the crisis, there'll suddenly be political will. The country will support it and we'll get things done. We'll change it and fix it. Well, okay, maybe. But what kind of pain would that be at that point? Wouldn't it be better to address it now before we get to that pain point? Ideally, yes. And unfortunately, most people have resigned themselves to believe that we won't. And Elon's saying, I don't accept that. We need to do something about this now to the extent we can. So what are the two options? Well, the two options are, if you go to the next one, is if you get our spending in line with income, and again, this is not feasible today, to cut out spending, you bring spending from 140 down to 100 and grow it at the rate of income is not possible. But let me just show you, if we did that, what that would mean for the debt. It would mean that the debt stays flat, and it would mean that our debt to income ratio comes down. And then from an interest cost perspective, Herbert, on the next page, over 15 years, we kind of get back to where we are as far as interest cost as a percent of income at around 20%. Okay, so 15 years from now, we'd get back to where we were if we can get spending in line with income immediately.
A balanced budget, right? It's only spend what you make. Yeah, yep. Income.
Yep. Okay, so this is a very difficult thing to do.
Well, it's one of the policies that Elon might try to do, right? Is a balanced budget requirement that every year there's always a balanced budget, like, no ifs, ands, or buts, severe consequences. If the congressmen don't vote for that, the likelihood of that is very low that will even happen. But that's an example of one policy that he could try to put pressure against and try to force to make it happen, because nobody wants to do this. And no one is ever going to vote for it.
That's right. Now, the other scenario, Herbert, and we'll talk about this a bit more in a minute, but here's the illustration on this. Let's say we can grow our economy faster, right? So let's say our spending is still growing at 5%, but our income grows at 10. And if you think of income growing in line with GDP, then you could say, okay, that's like 10% GDP growth. So a massive increase in GDP growth. So you can see here then that the green line crosses the red line in about 8 years, 7 or 8 years, if that was the case, and then exceeds it beyond that. So then what does that mean for the debt and deficit? So you can see here that the deficit, which is shown on the bottom as numbers above the line, goes below the line. Therefore, it becomes a surplus in about year 9. You can see the debt, the yellow circles, peaks at year 7, year 8, and drops rapidly after that. And the debt to income ratio falls throughout this entire period.
So there will be a segment later in this show. You're going to show how maybe AI and robots could Elon accelerate the production of that then increases the GDP of the government of the United States, and that could save us, right? You'll tell us if that's even a possibility.
Now, this is a 15-year period. This is income growth at 10%. Maybe that's crazy. Maybe this happens over 25 years. Maybe the income growth is not as high, but the illustration's the same. It just gets stretched out over a longer period.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you can accelerate income growth now to 10%, we still have debt growing for the next 7-8 years, right? And this is why Elon's saying we've got to start turning the ship now, because it's not going to turn until 7 or 8 or 10 years from now. And then the third chart here is the interest cost. And again, same thing. The interest cost continues to grow for the next 7 or 8 years. Even if we overnight can accelerate growth to 10%, you're still going to have interest crowding out the rest of the budget. But interest cost as a percent of income comes way down, and that frees up money, to spend on other things. I guess that's the good news. If you could overnight accelerate GDP to 10%, that green line does start to come down immediately.
Every year. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's just the simplest way I can think of explaining to people the problem that we have with government today. Mm-hmm. And the two really rough scenarios of how we deal with it. We balance the budget or we grow our way out of it. Ideally, you want to do both. If you can balance the budget now, then you don't have that growth in the debt that I was showing for the next 7 or 8 years. It takes the pressure off of things. And I think Elon was hopeful that there was enough wasteful spending in government that with Doge, they could cut out a lot, and that would get us maybe halfway to where we needed to be. Mm-hmm. And I think he uncovered a lot of things, but there wasn't the political will to really address it, and hence his frustration. So, if you're in his shoes, you're a man that has the mind. He understands this probably better than almost anybody at this point. He's mission driven, as we talked about. He's got money. Why wouldn't you try to do something about this? Even though everybody says, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Well, he's probably looking in the mirror and saying, how can I not do it? If I'm one of the only people in the world that has the ability, the capability to do this, then isn't it kind of my calling to do so? It's hard for us, I think, to put ourselves in his shoes, but I would like to think that many of us would make the same decision. If you truly felt that you could change something for the benefit of humanity, you would do it. Okay. Now, I know a lot of people are going to fault me for saying, Cern, it's pie in the sky. The world doesn't work this way. But Elon's pretty transparent about what he's looking for. It's not about becoming the richest man in the world. He already is. He's already going to become the world's first trillionaire and beyond that. That's not what this is about for him. He's playing a different game than everybody else on the planet. Those are my thoughts about that, Herbert.
Yep.
Now, what is interesting is since 1926, the U.S. stock market has compounded at 7.15% per year for almost 100 years. Now, there's that green line. That line's 7%, but the actual number is 7.15%, would get you right to where we are there today at the end of the blue line. And you can see that the stock market has been above that line. It's been below that line many times. Now, sometimes it's above the line for, a couple of decades. Sometimes it's below the line for a couple of decades. But we've kind of grown constantly at roughly 7%. This is real returns, by the way. This is after inflation. So it's about 10% nominal, about 7% real. It's the return on stocks. So what's kind of interesting is that, can we break free from this constant growth line? We've had a lot of things in the past, and this chart shows it. We had the roaring 20s, where the return on the S&P was way above that 7% line. We had the post-World War II boom, where we were way above that line for a while, but then we dipped below it, again, and kind of brought it back. We had the internet boom, right? And then we had the pandemic free money boost. And then so at the end there, I'm saying, are we going to get a new AI age that will take us above the 7% growth forever, and we'll leave that behind and we can grow faster than that? And I think that's the ultimate question that remains to be seen. That's the hope, and that's what a lot of Tesla shareholders would like Elon to focus his attention on. And I would say that he is. Mm-hmm. He's also focusing his attention on trying to find ways to reduce government spending and waste. But clearly, he's very focused on ways to accelerate this blue line. Now, the blue line is the S&P 500 return. It's a proxy for the success of the economy. Elon's not focused on the S&P 500. He's focused on increasing the productivity of humanity and accelerating GDP growth and getting us to this world of abundance. But again, this is a pretty good proxy of it because it's the nation's largest 500 companies. If they're successful, then the country's successful, or vice versa. So that's the challenge, right? And a lot of people have been saying, well, with AI and robotics, this gives us the opportunity more so than the other booms that we see on this page, right? If you can drive down the cost of energy, drive down the cost of intelligence, drive down the cost of labor, drive down the cost of everything, then you should be able to accelerate growth on a real basis, okay? A lot of that is actually going to be deflationary, right? As you reduce the cost of energy, reduce the cost of labor, it's very deflationary. But from a real perspective, you could actually accelerate the real growth. So Herbert, you and I had a chat with Adam Dorr a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the next few charts, again, just kind of share those thoughts that he put out there. I took his work and I put together a couple of charts. And it showed that, what kind of return on investment you might get from investing in humanoid robots, for example.
If a country supports and recognizes the importance of humanoid robots like China is, and they're already throwing in a lot of money, and they're creating, they're smoothing the rails for as many humanoid bot companies because they realize this chart. Could they supercharge GDP growth? Could they reduce the cost of things for their society and so forth? And this is why I think Adam and you've been sounding the alarm, saying countries like the U.S. need to step up to do this, otherwise they're going to fall behind, right? And then the cool thing is, and I think you'll show this in a chart here, a small amount of investment by a country is outsized returns. And so why wouldn't you do something like this?
That's right. Yeah. And so there's a lot to this chart here, but this shows that the annual investment in humanoid robots versus GDP growth. Okay. And this is from RethinkX. So the x-axis is the number of robots in millions. So we're starting at 10 million, going out to 280 million on the bottom there. Okay.
That per year? Yeah.
I think total robots.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the y-axis is I guess the percent of GDP. Okay. So, GDP growth. So the first number there, the 3.6%, kind of baseline GDP growth. And so, according to Adam Dorr and RethinkX, if we make an investment of just 10 million robots, okay, it would cost about $60 billion, or about 0.2% of current GDP. And according to their numbers, they think that we could see a boost of close to $1 trillion, which is about a 3.6% boost in GDP. So for a 0.2% of GDP investment, you could get a 3.6% boost. And then they say, okay, if we doubled our human workforce to 170 million by 170 million robots, so that's that white bar there. Yeah. Okay. It would cost about $1 trillion, or 3.7% of GDP. And according to RethinkX, they say that we could see a boost of GDP by 16.7 trillion, or 60.8%.
Wow. Increase. Yeah. That's huge.
Okay. There's a multiplier effect here. And then they're saying if that's not enough, if you want to double GDP, you would need to add 280 million robots to the labor force, cost 1.7 trillion, or 6.1% of GDP. And you would see a $27.4 trillion increase, or 100% boost in GDP. That's that orange or yellow bar on the far right.
Yeah, we're no longer talking about the 10% growth that you need to get a GDP. This is like, you can double the GDP, but you'd have to build 280 million. That's a lot of bots.
Right. And again, this further shows the necessity of getting broad participation, governments involved, right? You've got to move mountains in order to achieve this. But if we could, the payoff could be enormous. And again, that's what we're seeing with China. They literally are moving mountains, right? Their energy generation growth has been off the charts. That now allows them to invest in AI and their factories and all these other things that require energy. we haven't done that yet. And so it will potentially limit our ability to have the kinds of growth that we'd like to see. Because we're just not, as a nation, we just haven't been that good at thinking ahead 10, 15, 20 years. And in some of the stuff, to build infrastructure, it takes that kind of time. But here we are now with humanoid robots. We have an opportunity in this brand new technology to make sure that we're among the world's leaders. And the question is, are we doing enough? Elon understands this. Can Tesla do it all by themselves? Maybe, maybe not. So this one, let's say humanoid robots initially cost twice as much as a human worker, and they're only half as productive. But the costs come down over time per Wright's law, and their productivity improves with every software update. Then the initial boost to GDP are muted, maybe half of what Rethink X had, right? But again, that argues for rapid investment to get to the point that we need them to be, right? Again, if the robots aren't as productive and they cost us twice as much, then the sooner you invest in them, the sooner you can get the price down, and the sooner you can get the robot's capabilities up to where it needs to be, right? And I think for me that this is kind of more realistic about where we are, right? We're not going to immediately accelerate GDP, right? These robots aren't as productive as humans, but they could be and they will be, and eventually they'll be more productive than humans. And then that final chart, Herbert, with the 3 red bars, this shows if we have 2, 5, and 10x the number of bots per human worker, that's the red ones. So at twice the number of bots per human worker, GDP grows 120%, or it's a 120% boost. If we have 5 times as many bots per human, you get a 300% boost in GDP, and at 10x you get a 600% boost in GDP.
This is 8 billion, right?
800 million.
800 million bots.
Yeah.
This is a billion bots.
Yeah.
So, you've heard Elon say at some point he sees, 2 billion bots, 4 billion bots, 8 billion bots in the future. So this is not, potentially could happen.
Yeah. And the investment they're showing in green, the annual investment as a percent of GDP is in green, and the GDP growth is in blue. So this is a opportunity to get incredible return on investment with this kind of technology. I've said this before, this is the first time in human history that we're developing a form of labor that's going to be better than humans in all ways, and will only improve. What we're seeing today is the worst the technology will ever be, and right now it's not that great, but these bots still are pretty impressive. We've seen them do real work. Okay, they don't last very long. Some of the parts wear out. They're expensive, but unless you make a massive investment and ramp that up, you're not going to get the improvements. Then this is the opportunity that we have. So in my view, Elon sees all this, right? Like if I can figure it out, then Elon's already figured it out. Okay. And he understands that we need to tackle the problem from both sides. We need to grow our way out of this problem, but unless we fix politics or try to, these problems are just going to persist. If we find a way to massively grow GDP, politicians are going to find ways to spend all that money, and we're not going to get the benefits of abundance if they're just spending it. This is the challenge, I think.
Yeah. Now that Elon is dipped his toe into politics and he realizes how the government works, right? There's this, it's just the way it works, right? People vote you in, but once you're in, you're trying to give back to those people who voted you in. And so you are not worried about, you're not thinking about the good for the country. I mean, sure, sometimes you worry about economic warfare with China or some sort of risk for the country, but most of the activity, the policies that they'll do, I think somebody said it best. They're not just shooting themselves in the foot with the BBB. They just actually shot themselves in the heart. And so Elon needs to, make sure that the policies are there, supporting AI, supporting robots, supporting energy. And you can see the BBB did not do that. So he's concerned. He goes, okay, why is this happening? Why is the politicians here spending too much money and not at the same time not invest in these things? You can, if you did both, okay, you spend all this money, but at least invested just like you did suggest here in robots and energy, maybe you could grow yourself out of this. There's a high chance you could.
We have to try.
Yeah.
And we also have to try addressing the problems at the other end with politics. Right? It's a two-pronged approach that's necessary in my opinion. And unfortunately, Elon's Elon's the man for the job. Who else is going to step up? Now,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully he can bring others with him, and hopefully he's not the only guy behind the American Party that that matters. Initially, he might be, but hopefully over time that needs to become a bigger effort.
Mm-hmm.
But Elon's the one that's
Yeah.
showing the leadership here.
The only thing I think with your presentation, the one thing that I don't know if I agree with is like you started off with his mission to Mars, and that a lot of things he does, right? Starship, robots, energy. These are a boring company. These are all Cybertruck. These are all the things that is needed for the mission to Mars. So he's putting them in place. And you said one of the other things he needs to work on is politics, because obviously you have a society there. And he's thrown out a few ideas in the past, right? It's like he doesn't think it should be a representative kind of organization. It should be direct, and citizens should be able to vote directly. I think he's said something like that. So he's already thinking through the first principles. But I don't know if I agree that, well, then he needs to kind of start politics here to be able to learn how to do it in Mars. I think it's a lot easier or more in line with his thinking to start with first principles. If I have a fresh slate, and that's the best place, Mars, I'm going to land there first. I can decide how is this society built. I'm going to think of it from a fresh slate and really, redo it just like the founding fathers did, right? Really think this through from a first principle concept, how to make this work, a society in the future. In here in Earth, it's mired with too many pieces that's already in place, and you're like trying to maneuver within this thing of what do I do here? So I think it's nothing he does here is going to be transferable to Mars, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, Herbert. I think that the situation is very different. There's a whole history of why we have the political structures we do here, and very difficult to change. I think the strongest point, though, as to why Elon needs to be involved in politics is when you do send the starships to Mars, they've got to keep coming.
Yep.
It's not just a one-time thing, and Mars is self-sufficient forevermore, and we're done. That's not the case. So you need certain stability and consistency here on Earth that he's worried that we don't have.
Yep.
Right. We've seen that with the EV mandates. We've seen that with the EV credits. We've seen that with the zero emission vehicle credit program. Things just get upended every time there's a change in leadership. Right. And so I think he's worried about that. Not those particular programs, but just the evidence that things just get, put in place and then canceled 2 or 4 years later.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, again, the big ones is that $5 trillion to spend, regardless of this. Everybody realizes that U.S. is about to go bankrupt. The debt, the interest rates itself is just out of control. He got that, but they didn't do it. And then neutering solar and energy, I think that's another issue. And then maybe I think also getting rid of Jared Isaacman for NASA, just that is an example of they're not, that could be as a deterrent to all the missions he wants to do.
Well, that was an example of, taking somebody who is probably the most qualified person out of the role just because he in the past supported Democrats.
Exactly.
Right. Just like, by the way, that Elon had done in the past and Trump in the past. I mean, a lot of these people were in the same boat. And just to kind of cap this off, a lot of Tesla investors are really worried about Elon's involvement in politics and is concerned about the impact on Tesla stock price and Elon being distracted. Let me just offer briefly a kind of a counter to that view and just coming at it from pure sort of financial theory. Okay. The price of Tesla stock today, in theory, reflects its future prospects. In the world that we have today, in the economic system that we have today, in the political system that we have today, with all its flaws, right? Think about for a second then, if you now have the leader of your company trying to make changes in the economic system, in the political system, that creates call options on a future that's better or different than where we are today. That for Tesla could be tremendously positive. If we can get our nation back on a firmer, fiscal footing, the upside for Tesla actually could be way higher than what we're looking at today, given our current system. So I would actually make the case that Elon's involvement in politics is actually right now a positive for Tesla because the call option always has a positive value. Now, the call option may expire worthless. Who knows? We don't know if Elon's going to be successful in changing anything. But nonetheless, it's a call option, and the call option has value. Therefore, it adds value to Tesla. Now, on the other side of that, you could say, well, okay, sir, and fine, but the discount rate you would apply to Tesla should be higher because it's now greater risk. Sure, maybe that offsets some of the extra call option value. But all these things can be looked at kind of through, financial instruments, and ultimately investors need to do that to price Tesla appropriately. And I'm guessing that that's sort of what's happened in this past week. Initially, Tesla stock was down. It's come back a bit. As people think about the implications of all this, there's actually some big potential positives, as well as the issues that we see.
I agree. The first day, there was a lot of panic. And then since then, I think, most institutional investors in Tesla, they didn't bash this. They were kind of neutral or supportive, interestingly enough. So it kind of quieted down a little bit. And then it didn't hurt that announcement after announcement after announcement of progress for Tesla's products, robotaxi expanding, Grok showing that it's the smartest, world's leading AI in the world now. All of these things just shows Elon is still killing it. He does not need guardrails. He's killing it in everything he needs to get done, and it's showing now. That was a good thing that it came just right this moment of this political turmoil. So we'll see. I mean, we're still early days. We don't know what's going to end up happening here, but that's certainly what happened in the last week.
Yeah, and it's also interesting, when you think about what happened after Trump won the presidential election and the run-up in Tesla stock. Again, I could make the case that was, people reflecting the value of call options on the success. Elon supported a candidate, that candidate won. Therefore, there's option value in the success of that candidate for Tesla, right? And people were optimistic about that. And then as time went on, people sort of realized that, okay, maybe this option value is not what we thought it was, and the price came back down again. Right. Again, I would argue that Elon's involvement in politics going now a different route, one perhaps more of his own choosing and own design, may actually also be viewed as a very positive for Tesla. Of course, the market doesn't see that yet, but it may be one of those situations where we have a call option that's just not fully appreciated by market participants. And it'll take some time to develop as well.
Thank you very much. Cern, you have an opinion, and you had felt that you needed to step up and talk about it. It's a little bit counter to the general Tesla investor feeling. So I think that the people appreciate that you put it and you kind of laid it out, right? And first of all, here's all the things that Elon has accomplished. Here's what he's trying to do with Mars and also Earth. Here's what's going to happen if, this is what he sees and why he thinks that the debt is out of control, the interest rate's out of control, the spending is out of control, but there's hope, right? Human robots is the answer. AI is the answer. And good news, Tesla and Elon has been thinking about this for years, and they're ahead, and maybe they could save us, but you need the government to support it. And certainly not hinder it. It was just another risk. And so maybe it's better that Elon is involved in politics. And if he didn't see the existing one, the Republicans supporting him, then he needs to find a way through. So he was put into this position.
Yeah. No, I think that's an accurate synopsis, I think, of what he's facing. A lot of people accuse Elon of being sort of very reactionary, but I think behind it all is a very well thought out strategy. It appears to be reactionary, but I don't think it is.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cern. Check out his organization, BrilliantAdvice.net, and follow him on X at Cern Basher. And you can see all this research that he does ahead of time. Thank you very much, Cern. Appreciate you spending time. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Robert.
Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.